Between the two of them, the inside of Coates, Barker gets too heavily involved. And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Hello everyone and welcome to AOC Gaming's League of Champions powered by VRRC. You're here with myself, Jack Oliphant, and in the virtual comments box as per usual is Dave Marshall with Tom O'Farrell as usual on the cameras. We've got an exciting evening's racing coming up for you at the wonderful circuit of Monza. One of the most well-used circuits, I'd say, in all of sim racing. One of the most recognisable in all of real-world racing included. 60 minutes of practice is well underway with a qualifying of 15 minutes. That is, I think, just about to get underway. Race 1, 20 minutes. Race 2, 20 minutes, but a full reverse grid, so keep an eye out for that one. Going to be very exciting indeed. This is, of course, all part of the League of Champions. We've already done the Ginetta Super Cup, 4 weeks of that. Coming out with a champion. Touring cars, 4 weeks of that, done and dusted, coming out with a champion. And now into the GT4 Sprint Cup, just before we go to the mini JCWs. And indeed, there we go. On your screen right now is the GT4s, of what you've got the options of, basically. The Aston, the Audi, the BMW, the McLaren, and the Mercedes. And you can see we're at Monza. Dave, it's a fantastic set of cars. It's a great calendar. It's just an awesome series.
It is indeed, and you know what, it's the first championship in the League of Champions where the drivers have had multiple choice of different cars, so yeah, it's made things really interesting, a little bit indecisive for some of the drivers, and the prizes are still fantastic that are on offer. For first place in the championship, one of our brilliant SR5s, Second place prize, one of our SR3 chassis, and then third place prize is one of our GT4 seats. That goes between the GT and F1 position using exactly the same seat and brackets. And then fourth down to eighth place prize is our membership packages, as that give you store discounts, entry to races. It's just mega to have that many prizes on board. But not only that, you know, our driver of the round, obviously, as well there, Jack, provided by AOC for this championship, and a wonderful set of headphones as well. But not only that, the League of Champions is split into two different categories. So at the end of the whole League of Champions, it goes into a big table, and the top 10 of them score first place for an AccuForce direct drive wheel, second a set of OBP eSport pedals, third an AOC 34-inch curved display. Second race is 11th to 20th place of the final standings, and that is the same prizes that you get for each individual championship amongst the League of Champions. I hope that was clear enough. That was almost one breath. To you, Jack.
I was going to say that was quite impressive, I'd say. And if anybody's wondering what on earth the race 1 to 10 prizes look like on a entire Sim Race 5 chassis as well, then keep an eye on the VRRC Facebook pages, or if you want to see it in real life, you can. We are visiting some of the British touring car circuit rounds near you. I think we're heading to Silverstone, potentially Croft and Thruxton, all three of which are yet to be raced at. And there you go on your screen at the moment. I have to say, you were at Brands Hatch with them, Dave, weren't you? They do look outstanding. The Sim Race 5, Rich described to me as if you've got a direct drive wheel, you want to sort of the Sim Race 5. It's a little bit sturdier, a little bit more beef in the bones. If you are just a normal sort of Fanatec or Logitech or anything like that, belt-driven drive, then you are fine with the Sim Race 5, Sim Race 3, sorry. And obviously, the GT4 is just an extremely comfortable seat. So, by all means, come down if you're at Silverstone or any of the sort of Croft or Thruxton. Come down, the truck will be there, and you guys can have a look and maybe even have a go. There we go, Shanghai round 1. That is the race results from round 1. Jack McIntyre came out with the championship lead, with Jordan Brennan in second place. And Ryan Elliott in third. Driver of the round was Jordan Brennan, because he came through the field like a madman, it has to be said. Great pace, great race grab, got us all off our seat. It was very exciting indeed, and I'm sure the ballast will make things equally as exciting in the second round here at Monza. Jack McIntyre, as we said, leading the way, only by 10 points. I say only, that's quite a large margin in this early stages. That means he's got a full 60 kilograms of ballast on board, an absolute ton of ballast. Well, not quite a ton, 60 kilos instead. Jordan Brennan in second place, he's got 50. Ryan Elliott with 40. Dan Zelos with 30. So increments of 10 going down to fourth. And all of a sudden it gets a little bit different. Scott Bugner, Max Edmondson, Andy Dorman, and Andy Cowell all the way down to 8th. They all have ballast on board, but of course, slightly less increments. Keep an eye on Andy Dorman this time round as well. 12 kilos on board, but a good practice pace he's been putting in so far, hasn't he, Dave?
Yeah, definitely. You know, Andy Dorman's looking really quite rapid in the Beamer here tonight. But needless to say, let's jump down for a hot lap with myself in the fantastic sounding Audi R8. So here we are across the line here at round 2 of the GT4 Sprint Championship, powered by VRRC at Monza. So you can see we're going to get to the top end of 6th gear here, brake just before that dark part in the tarmac, down to 2nd gear, not turning in too early. Getting good traction on exit here is really key. You can hear the R8 struggling, big V10, a lot of weight over that back axle, and it's still struggling. So them front engine cars like the Aston or the BMW, that might be one of their weaker corners that they're really struggling to get that power down. Heading towards the second chicane here, same again, nice and late on the brakes under the bridge, but you want to make sure you can get off them to allow the car to rotate in across the inside the curb there, and that opens up the right hander. You can get the wheel straight, get better traction out of that corner. Really difficult right hander here. It's a very late apex. You almost use the access road on the right as your apex point, but it's hidden, it's round the corner. In towards this right hander, you want to just take a smidge of curb on the inside there. It doesn't throw the car off too much. Running a nice bit of exit curb on the exit there as well. Heading down towards the dip, down towards Ascari. Top end of 6th gear yet again on approach. we're going to be nice and late on the brakes, using a lot of entry curb here. So we're going to be down to 4th, in now, in early, across there. See the R8 gets quite a big bounce there, but traction control just sorting things out, keeping our foot flat to get the best run down this possible. Now, for all this track isn't one of the most technical tracks, you can see the long straight, the slipstream, this is going to play a huge part in the racecraft for the drivers. So for all it's not technical in the driving, it's going to be a very, very hard track to race. You can see rolling the speed in 4th gear, gradually picking up the throttle, getting the steering nice and straight and driving it all the way to the line. Make sure you tune in on Tuesday from 7:15 on our Facebook and YouTube platforms here at VRRC.
Thank you very much for that lap round Monza, Dave. Or I would say that in the past, Dave. Obviously, you weren't commentating on that live, were you? But it's still a very special track, that's to be sure. And it's featured on pretty much every major calendar going over the past 50 years or however long Monza's been going, whether it's been the old circuit or the new circuit, the less angled circuit, shall we say. Looking at qualifying here, Dave, they're about to, well, they have just started putting in their first semi-representative laps, haven't they? But slipstream, we were just saying while you were throwing us through that lap, is very important here at Monza.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, slipstream, I think, could play an absolutely huge part, especially in the race. I don't think any drivers are going to be friendly enough to try and, aid each other in the slipstream department. But you can see here, Scott Bugner, I'm trying to decide who that is right in front of him. I believe that's probably Andy Carroll. So Andy Carroll, actually, I was going to say give him a slipstream, but actually not in his favour at all there with the run out of that corner. Probably Scott Bugner losing a little bit of time there with a bit of complication with Andy there through the chicane there. But he's right on the back now. He's got his lights on, so Andy is obviously clearly still on the lap there.
Yeah, he is. So the laps will start flying in thick and fast. Chris Shepherd is a driver that we are hotly tipped to be very quick. He was very quick in practice at Shanghai. The races went very sourly for him, though, whether it was a game problem or internet problem. I think it was an internet problem, potentially, which just meant he was basically what's called lagging all over the place. And that's not turbo lag, that is internet lag that we're talking about here. His ping was through the roof. I won't bother explaining what ping is, but basically he was seeing things about 3 seconds after they actually happened. So he was going along a straight, and then all of a sudden he'd be in a corner, but he would still be on the straight in his view. So he was afraid that he would end up hitting someone off, and he ended up retiring the car in the second race. Very difficult to race with like it is. So we're expecting big things from him. He doesn't have any weight on board because he obviously retired early on, and he's been very quick in practice, Dave.
He has indeed, and you know what? For me, that is great sportsmanship. And actually, just go and pull there with a 58.2, a very good lap time from Chris Shepherd there. But it's great sportsmanship. He knew it wasn't safe to be out there on track. It was, potentially going to take other drivers out because he didn't know exactly where they were, and instead Partey's car went, you know what, guys, it's not fair for me to race. He's come back stronger than ever this round, and he's put it on pole. So fair play to Chris Shepherd.
Yeah, even though it may well have sacrificed a Sim Race 5 chassis as well, I'm sure he won't have taken it too lightly. It was obviously a heavy decision for him as Jack McIntyre gets a little bit wide coming out of one of the chicanes there, as a few drivers in the background go very sideways coming out of the chicane and into the first of 2 Lesmos. It's quite an entertaining section of corners, in my opinion. And you know what? Monza, I'm not too afraid to say it's not one of my favourite tracks of all time, Dave. I actually like Zolder, and I got into a conversation with someone who actually they hated Zolder, and the reason they gave for hating Zolder was the fact that there were too many chicanes. There's 3 chicanes at Zolder. So I asked him, oh, well, what's your favourite track then? He said Monza. I was like, well, there's 3 there's 3 chicanes at Monza. What do you want from me?
That's controversial, isn't it? You've got Monza, which is essentially 3 straights and 2 chicanes, and then Zolder, which is, very technical track, but still, realistic. The majority of lap time you can gain round Zolder is gained through 2 chicane sections. So, for me, actually quite similar tracks in that respect.
Well, they are indeed, and we're going around, obviously, one of the iconic tracks at corners at Monza. Here, the Parabolica is McIntyre, obviously just coming into the pit lane, so he wasn't on a particularly hot lap. These guys will come in, they'll change tyres, won't they, Dave? And then they'll go back out there and try and set quicker lap times. They might even be tweaking the setup slightly. And yet again, we'll mention that there is options to change one or two bits of the setup, but nothing major. It's all pretty much fixed, apart from what you can change if you are actually driving it in the cockpit. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly that. So, before you go out on track, you can change the PSI of your tyres that you go out on. So that's how well they manage to stay in that window. Whether they slightly overinflate, whether they overheat, you can do that through tyre management. But that is before you go out on track. Once you're out on track, you obviously can't change that. And then regarding what you can change on the car, you can change anything you can that you can change in the cockpit of the car in real life. So traction control, ABS, brake bias, the brake power. So, you've got a fair bit to play with, but the actual majority of the car, the toes, the cambers, the suspension setup, is all locked for every car. So it's as level playing field as it can, while also making the car as comfortable for each individual driver as possible.
And that's quite important in this GT4 series in particular, isn't it? Because unlike the other ones, which were single-make series, I mean, the touring cars, they all looked slightly different, but fundamentally, they were the same car. Andy Dorman with the huge slide out of the second chicane. Yeah, fundamentally, they were the same car, weren't they, underneath? But these GT4s have all completely different. They have different strengths and everything like that. So the balance of power is really crucial. But also, they'll take the weight differently. They'll carry the weight differently when they had the ballast on board. So it's quite a headache for you and everybody else involved in VRRC to try and make it a level playing field when you add the ballast on and you add all different types of chassis engines that are going on here.
Yeah, exactly that. So for me, it's all about trying to make it as even as possible and leaving it down to the driver to find the advantage in the car and in their driving style. It shouldn't be decided for me on just how long they spend fine-tuning whether the rebound needs to be 1 or 5 clicks. So yeah, as even as it can be.
Yeah, as we're seeing a few drivers still warming their tyres up. They'll it's a long lap here. It's about 2 minutes the lap, especially the out lap here. We'll be expecting them to, well, maybe get 1 or 2 flying laps in. They'll have to get a bit of a move on if they want 2 flying laps, since they're going to come across the line. They should just about get it, but if they make a mistake, they are running it very close here. Andy Dorman especially, currently sat in 4th place. Now, Andy Dorman was very quick in practice. When I logged on the server about 40 minutes ago, he was top with Chris Shepherd in 2nd place by 0.005 of a second. So Dorman really coming back strong here. He has 12 kilograms on board, remember. Chris Shepherd obviously doesn't have any. But the likes of Dan Zelos flying in with a little bit of a surprise here. Ryan Elliott especially in 3rd place.
Yeah, and actually, I'm just keeping an eye on the lap time board here, and I've noticed a disconnection from Jordan Brennan. So Jordan Brennan running into technical issues, which is really not what we like to see. Unfortunately, if he doesn't manage to get back in the server, that is a huge drop in championship points for 2nd place in the championship he's running. So a huge loss in points there. Saying that, if he's not here this round, his car's going to be incredibly light next round. But the amount of points, can he overcome that? I'm not too sure.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? You get 8 rounds of racing here for this series, and if you miss 2 of them, you miss a quarter. It's not that difficult to maths, is it? So it's always very difficult to come back from that. Andy Dorman's gone purple in Sector 1, so we're actually following him on board. Well, not quite on board. We're actually following him here. He's coming up to a little bit of traffic. Now, that could go 1 or 2 ways, can't it? The BMW is very mighty in a straight line, so he's probably a little bit worried that he'll catch up to them at the end of the next straight going into the Parabolica, but he hasn't cut the corner there. He's still got the car nicely set up, but it is a bit of a slower Sector 2, by quite a long way, actually. Ryan Elliott a full 8/10 quicker through 7/10 quicker through Sector 2 than Andy Dorman just managed there. So it's whether Dorman will be able to pick it up for the 3rd sector. As you said, it is quite mighty in a straight line. May not be good enough for pole, but he might be good enough to just move himself 1 or 2 positions, or at least get a little bit closer to Ryan Elliott. That's as he goes across the line here, Andy Dorman. I think he's having to stay where he is.
Yeah, 59.0, still not quite enough to challenge it, but he does have time in that lap, and he'll know he does. So the thing that the Beamer seems to be really quite strong at is it does seem to ride the bumps very, very well. So it's quite a nice all-rounder of a car. We can see that it's getting up to about 153 down the straight, which shows the McLaren and the Aston. But I think the Aston's, you know, nearly 155 mile an hour actually in the hands of Chris Shepherd. But remember, he doesn't have any ballast on that car either, so that is also going to be helping massively there. But Andy Dorman, not to say that Beamer is driving incredibly well with a good pilot behind it. You see how we can just take them curbs nicely through there. He maybe caught a little bit of gravel there on the exit of that chicane. And who's this that's in front of him currently? I believe that is that Mick Sutton, I believe, in the Aston. So Mick Sutton here, if he's on a lap and Andy Dorman's on a lap, it's not an ideal scenario when you end up too close to the back of a car and you're trying to push for that lap time as well.
It's also not an ideal scenario when Chris Shepherd finds a little bit more pace, because he's gone purple in Sector 1. He's taken that purple time away from Andy Dorman, and I have to say, only just though, 42.3 in Sector 1. Chris Shepherd's a man on a mission at the moment, and Dorman has gone slower Sector 1 and 2, and the only other driver improving is Scott Bugner. Chris Shepherd, I think, has gone off the circuit though in Sector 2. That won't hurt. That won't help his lap time whatsoever. Andy Carroll putting in a purple Sector 3. Andy Carroll absolutely flying. The Scott Bugner here coming round the Parabolica. It's potentially, well, it probably is going to be the final time, because I think as soon as we hit 0, Dave, we're going to go straight into the grid. Scott Bugner's timed this to perfection, picking up a slipstream a little bit. 13 seconds left and moved himself up to 5th place. Callum Newsham, and particularly Jack McIntyre, won't be very pleased with that one.
No, this is not in exactly what I think was Jack Mack's plan there, down in 7th place. But I think he's going to probably accept himself with maximum ballast on board around Monza. It's a track that really doesn't favour them heavier cars. As we see Scott Bugner just lose a little bit of the back end. That, unfortunately, will be probably his best lap time gone already at the end of the first chicane. So that's not exactly ideal a way to start your lap either.
No, it's not. So, as I said, it's... well, I got it wrong, actually. I thought as soon as the checkered flag dropped, we were going to go straight into the grid. But it turns out they can finish the lap that they're on. So there is opportunity to try and go a little bit quicker. And Jack McIntyre has gone green, Sector 1. Chris Shepherd, I don't think, has carried... Oh, yes, he has carried on, actually. He's gone purple, Sector 1. So he's already beaten his other purple Sector 1 lap time by half a tenth. Chris Shepherd still a man on a mission here. He's in the lead of the race. He's at the back of the pack, though, at the moment. Maybe he'll be hoping, as he goes through the Lesmo, to see a car just up ahead of him. As he comes out the Ascari chicane, is probably where he'll be hoping to pick up just a touch, a whiff of slipstream, a whiff of a tow. Callum Newsham, green in Sector 2 as well. Couple of drivers off the circuit, I think, going into the Ascari chicane. Mick Sutton's improved in Sector 2 as well, but it's all about Chris Shepherd here, because he's currently on pole position by a full 2 tenths. His Sector 2 is not an improvement, but it is still one of the quickest Sector 2s we've seen out there at the moment. Callum Newsham purple in Sector 3, and a huge move for Callum Newsham up to 4th place. He went green Sector 2, purple Sector 3. Callum Newsham moving his way up as Chris Shepherd gets a nice little tow. Jack McIntyre is going to come across the line. He's in 7th at the moment. I don't think it's an improvement. Other drivers bleed into the pits.
What's Andy Dorman going to do? Andy Dorman's not far off the finish line here. In fact, Andy Dorman's pulled in.
Yeah, he wasn't going quicker.
Yeah, that to me, look, Andy was on an all right lap there. So 3rd sector must really not have played into his hands there. That he will be disappointed with that, I feel, Andy Dorman. He was so fast in the practice to put it 5th on the grid, but in saying that, he knows he's got the time in the car. I reckon this race might come to him. If he can be a little bit aggressive in some of his moves, he might find it quite easy to get past some of the cars in front.
Well, sometimes, you know, when you don't qualify quite as well, you're all hyped up for qualifying, and all of a sudden it doesn't quite go your way. It actually mellows you out slightly. The disappointment just ekes away, and then all of a sudden you sort of just relax your focus for race number 2. So absolutely astounding there by Chris Shepherd. He went a little bit quicker, but not by that much. So he'll be on pole position, with Dan Zelos and Ryan Elliott rounding out the top 3, Callum Newsham and Andy Dorman rounding out the top 5. And usually around this time, Dave, you can have a chat to our pole man.
We can indeed, so I'm going to try and grab a word with the pole sitter at the moment. Can we get him into the live broadcast here? Chris Shepherd, is your mic unmuted? Can you speak?
Hiya.
How we doing, Chris? Yeah, I mean, what a lap for a start. The Aston seems really, really well hooked up round here, and you put the time in when it mattered. Andy Dorman maybe not quite performing enough to take that pole, but you doing enough to get ahead of Dan by over 0.2 of a second. That must be a great feeling going towards the race.
Yeah, it's a good start. Let's hope we can carry it on through the race, because this is where it counts, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in round one we saw you with very unfortunate tech issues, and actually we were giving you praise for really good sportsmanship there by, being aware that, it was a bit dangerous being around other cars. But you've come into round two, I'm presuming them tech gremlins have gone away a bit, and you've managed to find the form that you had in the practice running up to round one.
Yeah, that's correct. I had issues with my CPU, but it's now resolved, so the game's running pretty smooth now. So, yeah.
Well, huge congratulations putting it on pole there, Chris. I'll let you go and get your head down and get ready for the race. And, yeah, let's see how you get on.
Thanks, bud. Cheers.
That was Dave Marshall chatting to our pole sitter, and he'll be hoping to convert that pole into a race win. Just to have a longer chat with you, Dave, after race one. Couple of minutes to go, but we are going to have a quick word from our sponsors before we go into race one of the evening. And we are back. A fantastic looking headphone, that. And that is, of course, up for grabs at every single round of the League of Champions from here on out in the GT4s and in the Mini JCW as driver of the round. And that's where you guys can get involved as well. If you're in the chat and you fancy giving us a quick word, we'll try and give you a quick shout out on wherever you're posting this from. It is being posted in about 20 different places, so we will try and keep an eye on all the chats. But if you want to nominate a driver of the day, then all you have to do is hit them up in the comments. Let us know who you're supporting and who you think is doing a great job. We will take race one and race two into consideration as well. Then me and Dave will have a little bit of a discussion and see who we think is overall driver of the day for us. And I think Tom O'Farrell even gets a mention every so often in our little Discord chat. So great to have his input as well, even if we don't have Rich tonight. About 30 seconds away from the first race of the evening. Chris Shepherd, Dan Zelos, Ryan Elliott, and Callum Newsham will all be hoping to start well from the second row of the grid. Andy Dorman in the top five. He'll be hoping to go forward after his fantastic practice performances haven't quite been converted into qualifying. Jack McIntyre and Jordan Brennan. Keep an eye out for Jordan Brennan because he's not appearing on our website timing tower, but he is in the session. He is on the grid, so wait and see. And we won't have to wait for long because as the engine notes rise, the lights come on, and we're about to go racing for the first time here on a Tuesday night. And what a start from Chris Shepherd. The same cannot be said for Dan Zelos as Ryan Elliott looks to be trying to go up the inside, I believe. There we go. And in fact, it's such a long way down to the first corner. The first chicane, Chris Shepherd's actually under threat from Dan Zelos up into the race leader. Zelos, who got an awful start, hasn't actually hurt him that much at all, and he routes into the race lead with Chris Shepherd in second place, Ryan Elliott in third, Scott Bugner up to fourth place. Callum Newsham, Andy Dorman slipped back to 7th, Jack McIntyre, but crucially, Dave, they all survived turn 1.
Yeah, so we were literally just commenting how Monza is always a bit of a pinch point, especially that first chicane. I did tell the drivers, if necessary, feel free to cut that chicane as long as you don't gain an advantage and give the place back. That's a massive move up the inside of Andy Dorman by Jordan Brennan there. Andy Dorman having to cut the chicane. I like to think he's probably going to back out of that to make sure he hasn't gained the advantage. But I tell you what, this has been all action from the get-go, hasn't it?
It absolutely has, which is what you fully expect at Monza, isn't it? It's such a long run down to turn number 1. Ryan Elliott we're currently focusing on here as Callum Newsham, Jack McIntyre, Andy Dorman, lots of drivers that you would suspect to be fighting for race leads. But of course, the ballast on board means that fighting for top 5 is actually quite an achievement for these drivers. And that's what will separate the champions from the one-hit wonders, shall we say. Dan Zelos, he is a champion in the touring cars for the League of Champions. He's currently leading the way.
Yeah, and a disastrous race 1 in round 1, if you remember, at Shanghai wasn't the best start for him. But round 2 got the reverse grid pole, and look where he is in round 2, yet again on the top spot. This is a great position for Dan to be in. Chris Shepherd, though, keep an eye on him. He's got great straight line speed in that car. Oh, as we see Jordan Brennan just getting slightly late on the brakes there. Jack McIntyre up the inside, sorry, of Callum Newsham it was, not Jack. Obviously, Jordan Brennan's got the same sort of colour scheme car, just blue on one side, so a little bit hard to tell straight off initial looking there.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for us to tell where Jordan Brennan is actually half the time, because as I said, he's not appearing on our timing tower, yet he is appearing on the game's timing tower, so it's always going to be a little bit confusing. As Callum Newsham goes back up the inside, oh, and a huge hit of the curb on the inside of the chicane means he went barreling in. Another spinner, I think, is Brett Smith. Yeah, Brad Smith, so I always say Brett Smith, apologies to Brad. Is Brad Smith going wide as Callum Newsham now gets back going and facing the right way, just ahead of Andy Carroll. And well, that was a big hit of the chicane, wasn't it, Dave? And unfortunately, it didn't quite end very well for Callum Newsham.
No, I think that was probably a case of one driver taking a little bit too much curb and then unfortunately bouncing into the next car. And I think it was actually Callum getting bounced into the side of Jack, but then the collision was that hard with Jack's car. He bounced off it and then spun off to the right-hand side. So really unfortunate. Callum just hasn't had the luck in this championship. Really unfortunate in race 2 last time out, getting spun out and putting backwards into the gravel. This round again, finds himself backwards, but crucially, he's still in that top 10, Jack. It's not all lost yet. He will have a reverse grid position if it finishes the way it is at the moment.
You're absolutely on the money there, Dave. He needs, it's damage limitation, isn't it? You need to, even if you're having a bad round, it still needs to be a pretty good round. When such a short championship, there's no room for error, there's no drop points or anything like that. So it's going to be very interesting to see how he does recover and how he recovered in race number 2. Because as you mentioned, Dan Zelos had a bit of a terrible race 1 at Shanghai. He came back to win it in race number 2, and then obviously this time round at Monza, he's doing very well indeed. He's actually just put 2 purple sectors in, and he's, I don't want to say pulling away from Chris Shepherd, because that would be being harsh to Chris Shepherd. He's only 6/10 away, but still very good from the top 2, let's put it that way, because Scott Bugner's in 3rd, quite a long way off, about 2.5 seconds off. It's quite a long way at Monza, because the slipstream normally keeps everyone within about a second. Something that you're seeing plenty of here between Jordan Brennan and Jack Mack. As I think Brennan's just sitting behind McIntyre, isn't it? Now, this is a bit of a tactic, Dave, that quite often gets used at places like Monza, isn't it? You don't want to go into the lead lap in the lead. I remember watching a race at Thruxton for classic Mini Coopers from the 1960s, and there's about a train of 20, and no one wants to be leading on that last lap because they'll just be overtaken.
Yeah, the mighty minis at Thruxton. It's one of them things where slipstream plays such a big part. But you've got to remember, Monza has got that last corner, so it really opens itself up for a last-minute dive if that car behind is close enough for that lunge. But it is also quite easy to defend that move, unlike some other tracks like Thruxton, where you go into that last chicane, you can just keep it nice and tight, and the chance someone's going to put it around the outside if you go into the last chicane of Thruxton, it's a very brave man. Plato might try it, but other than that, it's a very brave man.
I'm ashamed to say that it happened to me. to lose out on a race. Was it a podium? I think it was podium at Thruxton. Yeah, going tight, and I was overtaken by Nathan Heacote, my teammate at the time, around the outside. And to be fair to him, it was a very, very ballsy move. It was a very, very good move as well, and very clean. So will we see a similar story here around the Parabolica? As Dave said, a little bit tricky, a little bit brave, especially if you're going to be risking second place, because second place is still a hell of a lot of points to be picking up here tonight. But Dan Zelos, with that weight on board, Dave, I mean, it's very impressive. He's in 4th place at the moment. I think that means he's got 30 kilos, and that is a hell of an effort, because that'll be really hurting him out the slower corners and out the chicanes.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to weigh this up at the moment, because Chris Shepherd, currently in 2nd place, was, you know, as we know from qualifying, was capable of doing a low 58 lap time. So I wonder whether this is just the weight of having that fuel on board has really brought the pace of his car down a little bit there. Dan Zelos setting about what the lap time he was doing in qualifying, even with fuel on, and he's still managing to hold that gap. So if I'm completely honest, was expecting a little bit more from Chris Shepherd's car out there in this race, but there's time yet. Is he just buying his time towards a little bit later on in the lap? He's still got Zelos in his sights.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be the first time that we have egg on our face for trying to predict or anything like that, and all of a sudden they turn it on in the final lap and they win it by a full second or something. As Andy Dorman is not messing around though, is he? And look at the squeeze he's putting on Jordan Brennan there. He definitely didn't want Brennan having any ideas of coming back at him as he goes up the inside through the second chicane into the Lesmos. He's defending a touch, but not really. He's taking the racing line. He just wanted to make sure Brennan knew that that wasn't going to be an option, as Brennan goes a little bit wide, going a little bit too hot through the apex, runs a bit wide on the exit. And Andy Dorman, he desperately needs to get into a rhythm and get back to the pace he was putting in practice. Maybe this is the sort of rhythm he needs to get into for the race. Maybe he was going for longer runs in practice. That's how he got his flying laps in there, because it is different, isn't it? Some drivers can just get out there. You're one of them, I'm sure, Dave. Can get out there, set a lap time within 2 laps and get back in, change the tyres over. Whereas I always need about 10 laps to try and put my best lap time in, because you need to get into that rhythm. You need to get used to the car, used to the circuit. It just takes some people a bit longer.
Yeah, so it's a completely different mindset going from quali into a race for me. You know, as we see what's gone at the top there, Chris Shepherd, I think it was just a timing tower, a little glitch there, a little swap around there, nothing actually happening in position. Yeah, so as I was saying, it's just a bit of a mind frame that you have to get into. It's that much pressure riding on your shoulders to get that lap in within 1 or 2 laps when you know them tyres are good, everything's resting on it, and you want to be the one putting that lap time on that time board first to put the pressure on the rest of the drivers. And honestly, I think maybe I found it slightly easier coming from a rallying background, you know, basically thinking, right, this is it, we'll go for it, and if I mess it up, I'm off into the trees. On a track, you've got a little bit more of a safety net, but I think it just allows you to keep a little bit more of that composure and really focus on where you need the car to go rather than focus on where you don't want the car to go. So it's one of them things. Some drivers manage to click straight into it, and other drivers are absolute machines when it comes to racecraft. Jack McIntyre, I know he's sat in a little bit of no man's land at the moment, but 5th place, honestly, that guy can really race and pedal right with any of the other guys on an even playing field. It's one thing to have the racecraft, but also qualifying is also really important on a track like this as well.
It is indeed, and importantly, racecraft is one of the things that Mick Sutton has been learning, as well as obviously that 1 lap pace, but he's going to have to learn everything he's been being taught in the academy powered by VRRC, because he's got Callum Newsham up behind him in the Audi R8 as we look back from Mick Sutton. In fact, the R8 just seems to be dropping back a little bit there. I don't know if that's the illusion of the trees or whether that is actually happening or not, but as they go into the Sky chicane, Callum brakes late, rides the curves a lot harder, opens up the right and left a little bit nicer than Mick Sutton. And look at this, he's got a fantastic drive out of Ascari. Mick almost white lining it. There we go, coming back across. He can't move too many times. That's probably moving 1 too many times as Callum Newsham now finds enough room to go at the inside. And they're still touching, and I have to say, Mick Sutton maybe needs to take a few more lessons from the academy before he starts racing that tight with some drivers, because Dave, that was a little bit naughty to move around. That's almost weaving, I would say.
Yeah, that was as we see, a huge moment there. I don't quite understand how that happened. That seemed to spawn a car in front or next to the other car there. That was really weird to see. But yeah, Mick Sutton there, a little bit naughty, I would say. That was on the verge of being a double manoeuvre there. Very late on the brakes, but just about managing to get that car stopped. But you can see that traction control really grabbing the back of that car on the exit there. And that's what's allowed Newsham to get on the power well and really have an opportunity going towards this second chicane. But you're really seeing the punch of that Aston. It's just got so much straight line potential there, Jack. The R8 is one of the slower cars down the straight, and I bet that's proven really frustrating for Newsham at the moment.
Yeah, indeed it is. And if any of the Mick Sutton fans out there think we're picking on him slightly, well, it's a common racing sort of knowledge, really, that you can move once and you can't move under braking zone at all. It's not what he did. But as he goes a little bit wide, that's allowed Callum Newsham to successfully go at the back, go up the inside, but up the back goes Mick Sutton and nudges him wide. But this is the fight for the race lead, as Chris Shepherd has now got ahead of Dan Zelos. Maybe he stopped wanting to sit behind the McLaren and maybe just wanted to get on with it. He finally gets past Dan Zelos. It did look like he was reining him in as we were focusing on that battle a little bit further down. But I'm sorry, we're going to have to focus on this one because obviously this is for race lead. This is for the big money. Shepherd versus Zelos. Zelos on the outside going into the Parabolica. Shepherd defending hard. This is what we're talking about. Are you brave enough to go around the outside of the final corner at Monza? It's a historically difficult move. And it's one that Zelos hasn't been able to pull off here today. Not quite yet. Anyway, he gets back into the slipstream, and even with that weight on board, his McLaren will be looking very punchy in a straight line, as well as obviously Shepherd's sheer strength in the Aston Martin, and clearly just sheer strength as a racing driver in the whole. Callum Newsham's now got past Mick Sutton, and Andy Carroll, after all that fighting, is in the mix as well.
Yeah, definitely. So we were saying there about Zelos and Chris Shepherd there. You know what? Looking at the lap time, Zelos hasn't dropped off that lap time. It's just Shepherd has found that pace that he had in qualifying, putting a 58.3 in the lap prior to this one, and that's what really helped him get close. And look at this, there must have been a lunge up the inside. Oh, that was a bit of a squeeze there by Mick Sutton pushing Newsham wide. I bet Newsham's face is a bit red here now. I bet this is a bit getting close to the wire for Newsham, but he's still in 10th place. It's looking good still for a reverse grid race. He's just got to remember that.
Yeah, I think, as I said, I think Mick, he's a little bit touch and go here. As I said, I think Callum may have something to say about this afterwards because, as I said, he was moving a couple of times going down towards the final corner. There's probably been a little bit more body contact than Newsham would be appreciating. Although Andy Carroll seems to be enjoying it because he's managed to get a place and obviously, get into this fight. And into the last 7 minutes we go, 6.5 minutes basically. Newsham needs to still do this, but it's a top 10 reverse grid, remember? Not a full reverse grid, I got it slightly wrong before. So Callum Newsham will be on pole position if he stays where he is. So crucially, Dave, that's, as a driver, it's pretty hard to think like that when you're trying to race through and it's not quite going the way you want to. However, when it all is done and settled, he'll be pretty pleased to be seeing no one in front of him after the beginning of race 2.
Yeah, I've got to admit, this is where it sort of comes down to, how much is it actually worth to get 2 positions ahead? Is it worth it in the point standings, or is it better to just sit back, get the reverse grid pole, and then you've got a nice clear track down towards turn 1 and possibly a chance to pull away? So it's always a bit of weighing up the odds here. And if I was Newsham at the moment, I think I'd be more tempted just to sit back, get the reverse grid pull, and then go and try and pull away at the start of race 2.
Well, like we mentioned a couple of times so far, it's obviously what Dan Zelos did, wasn't it? And look how well it's worked for him here as Mick Sutton goes defensive. He knew that Andy Carroll was smelling a little bit of danger, and he's defending into the first corner. Hits that curb, not as hard as Newsham did earlier on, which is why he's in the mess that he's in. But Newsham gets a really good run out of the second apex. He's going to go around the outside here. It's a relatively, well, it is very easy, flat out right-hander here, but it's crucially lining up the second chicane. That's the most important bit of this long right, and it looks like Sutton's going to be safe, but Newsham is going to have Andy Carroll here down into 9th place, and 10th goes Carroll.
Yeah, that was a great move by Callum there. Just set it up, got a lovely undercut through the first chicane and put his car exactly where Carroll couldn't then defend it. He was there on the outside. Job is done. Mick Sutton, this is where hopefully he's learnt a little bit from the academy. He can get his head down, not look in the mirror as much, rely on the actual pace he's got in the car and just go forward. It's when you start looking in that mirror, you'll know from real racing, Jack. When you see them headlights behind you, when you've got that bumper right on your backside, that's when you're not driving the way you know you can drive.
Absolutely not. No, you need to make sure you're not driving in your mirrors. That's the sort of common phrase for it, isn't it? Which is crucial and is an important lesson that you learn. And you know, you only learn by the experience. You can have everybody telling you, "Don't drive in your mirrors, don't drive in your mirrors." But when you're so on edge, you desperately want to beat the drivers around you and to finish as high as you can. It's so tempting to just count down the laps and start looking in your mirrors and all that sort of thing. Whereas really, what you need to do is hit your braking zone. That's all that's important. Hit your braking zone, hit your apex, and hit your power out of the corner, hit your exit. Everything else is up to the driver behind to try and make the moves on. And here is Callum Newsham making that move yet again. But the power of the Aston Martin is just pulling him away and out of the threat from Newsham. It's going to have to be a huge lunge, which indeed it is. And it's a massive lunge into the first apex, and he's got it stopped as Mick Sutton gives him a little bit of a tap and then ends up getting a bit squirrely because he had to come off the power. Callum Newsham has that 8th place.
Yeah, that was an absolutely fantastic move. Callum was going, right, I'm getting sick of this now. Let's get lit on the brakes, get the job done, stop it on the apex and force Mick to come up with something creative. Obviously, the speed differential, Mick got it stopped, came through the chicane like a bullet, but unfortunately, Callum had done exactly what he needed to do to mean that there was nowhere at all for Mick to go. And actually, Mick going a little bit too quick there into the second chicane as well. So Mick provisionally here, reverse grid pole for race 2. You know what? I really do think he's got the speed in the car. He's just overdriving it at this point in the race.
Yeah, he seems to be in his own head, or have Callum Newsham living rent-free in there at the moment. Anyway, but I mean, Callum Newsham wasn't messing around. That sector 3 in that previous lap was purple. So he was quicker than the likes of Chris Shepherd and Dan Zelos. Who, by the way, that little gap that we saw in the fight that we saw earlier on has been extended to 1.3 or 1.4 basically seconds between first and second. And there you go, visual for you there about how much Chris Shepherd has managed to pull on Dan Zelos. But make no mistake, Chris may be in the lead, but it is not a bad result for Dan, is it, Dave? Because he's driven very well. He's not really under that much threat from Scott Bugner, who's running in a very, very solid 3rd place. And he seems quite happy, doesn't he? He'll pick up some really good points. He knows Chris Shepherd's not necessarily in the championship running, so Dan will be very happy.
Yeah, you know what? And I've got to say, Dan's doing a fantastic job, but so is Chris Shepherd. Didn't rush the overtake, just let the grid separate out. That was really good racecraft from my mindset. You know, he knew he had the lap time there. He knew he could turn it on when he needed to, but didn't want to get in a battle with Dan Zelos too early on and start to back them back up into Scott Bugner and Ryan Elliott. Really clever drive there by Chris Shepherd.
Chris Shepherd's also put on a bit of a show now. He's just gone purple in Sector 1, a 10th of a second quicker than Dan Zelos, who went green. Scott Bugner has also gone green. So I think the fuel being burned off is causing the cars to go a little bit quicker here. You know, I thought maybe the tyres would go a little bit, but I suppose Monza's not that tricky on tyres, is it? It's more about the fuel load and straight line speed at the end of there, how quickly you can get out the corners. Top 5 rundown. Chris Shepherd obviously leading from Dan Zelos, then Scott Bugner in 3rd place, like we've mentioned. Ryan Elliott running a solid 4th. Again, no dramas for him this race so far, with Jack McIntyre in 5th, using all that racecraft that we were talking about before, just to maintain that 5th position. With Andy Dorman in 6th place, as we're currently focusing on Callum Newsham again here, who obviously has been the feature of the race so far, I would say, in terms of, you know, how dramatic the racing has been. But we're about to come on to the white flag lap. We've got 25 seconds odd left. But Chris Shepherd is about to come around and exit the final corner, the Parabolica, which means he will have one more lap to complete.
Yeah, and actually, you touched on something there that I didn't really give that much thought to, Jack. You mentioned about tyres there before, and actually, the common problem with tyres at Monza is actually getting them switched on, not the opposite way around. You've got that many straights, you've got to run your tyre pressures, that high to try and maintain tyre pressure and tyre temps. But then the problem is they start to cool off down the straight, so it is really hard to get the tyres in the right window. And I imagine the drivers have put plenty practice laps in during practice and qualifying to make sure them tyres are going to be at the end of the race exactly where they need them to be.
Well, that's exactly it, isn't it? Because we don't mess around here at VRRC. You've mentioned plenty of practice time. A lot of championships that I've covered and a lot of people will have competed in, as well as these guys will have competed in. It's a bit more, this one's friendly, don't get me wrong, but it's very competitive, whereas the other ones are very much social races, or they're sort of like, you just practice for the half an hour before you actually race that night. These guys will have been actually jumping on the sim and practicing hard for this championship, won't they? Because crucially, it's for big prizes. We don't mess around here at VRRC, Dave. These guys will have been on all week trying to find as much time as they can to get on the sim, get some track time in, play around with a little bit of setup in terms of PSI and brake bias and everything like that, and just get dialed in with the car, because it's, it means a lot.
Yeah, you know what? It really does. The prizes are fantastic, as you've already mentioned. The prizes are up there, but also we offer a 24/7 server. Whoa, Ryan Elliott with a huge slide through the end of Ascari there. And I tell you what, keeping an eye on it, Andy Dorman is lapping fast. So if for all he's not going to have enough to do here, Andy Dorman has the potential to be higher up than he is at the moment. Chris Shepherd does come round the last corner towards the finish line, and that is going to be a win for Chris Shepherd. His first win with VRRC. That is a fantastic effort and a great drive. Dan Zelos bringing up the grid in second place, and Scott Bugner doing enough, actually pulling away from Ryan Elliott in fourth place there. So a quality drive there from all the top three.
Huge lap times being put in as well. I mean, they're all putting in purple sectors, green sectors, and fastest laps here, there, and everywhere. So, in fact, on that last lap, Chris Shepherd was pretty much on qualifying pace to qualify second, which is quite incredible, isn't it? So, even after all that racing, you're right, the tyres really do not fall away. Mick Sutton, though, has fallen away somewhat. He's on 10th place. He's weaving around, though. He's going to lose that pole position for race 2. To Kenny Press, and we've just heard something in our ear that says he's out of fuel, potentially. Let's see if he actually managed to get any kind of drive out of the Parabolica, and I don't think he does. So Tom, our cameraman, has indeed pinged that one correctly, I think.
Oh, to lose out on your reverse grid race pole by a lack of fuel. I mean, he must have already just run out that, less than half a lap prior to the finish line, so he's doing just enough to get the finish line there, but that is really unfortunate.
Well, he has got to the finish line, which means we will have Press on pole position, and Dave, let's not mess about. You got some drivers to talk to.
We do indeed, so we'll jump straight down to the interview room, and we should have third place finisher Scott Bugner sat in the interview room with us. Are you there, Scott?
I am, yep.
Yeah, I mean, you did enough there. Started to pull away from Ryan Elliott there at the end. Really got the car underneath the air towards the end of the race. You must be fairly happy to bring home a podium in your first race here at Monza.
Yeah, really happy to be fair. Didn't really have a lot of time for practice this week. So just sort of hopped on. I've only done about 15, 20 laps. So yeah, chuffed a bit for that. Pace is really good.
Yeah, well, we were talking a little bit about tyre strategy and how hard it sometimes is to actually keep the tyres in the window. I take it you found the tyres were fairly consistent, and have you managed to find the balance with the car, with the setup on for the entire stint of the race?
Yeah, no, the tyres were holding up right to the end. I think I'd done my personal best on the penultimate lap. So yeah, tyres are really good all the way through, and took me a few laps just to get the balance right. But yeah, I think we were pretty spot on for race 2.
Well, good luck for race 2, Scott. Fantastic effort in race 1, and looking forward to seeing how you managed to get through the first chicane on that opening lap. I will move on to our P2 finisher, Dan Zelos. I mean, picking up where you left off last week, great points haul last week, taking a win, but you came out, you looked strong at the start of the race, but just not quite enough to hold on to Chris Shepherd from about that midpoint on.
No, I think I got a good jump on Chris, and then I just got on the rhythm quicker than he did, and then I made a little mistake, and Chris pounced on it, and then he was gone. He got great pace that car, and just consistently going quicker and quicker every lap. I was like, "Come on, Chris, you're in the lead now. You don't have to embarrass me anymore." But no, he drove a great race, and I'm really happy for Scott as well to be on the podium with us. So great race one. Let's try and do the same in race two.
Yeah, I mean, you had great consistency, just kept the car on the black stuff, and you brought home another podium as well. So great points all today, Dan, and good luck going towards race 2.
Cheers, mate.
I will move on. Our P1 finisher, Chris Shepherd. I mean, that's exactly what you needed, wasn't it? You didn't quite manage to nail the start down towards the first chicane. Dan got in front, but your patience, your lap time, just helped you pull back through, and you've took home the win.
Yeah, that's all right. Thanks, lads. I think Dan hit the nail on the head. Really, he was out the block so quick, straight away, just so fast. Pulled a bit of a gap, and then, yeah, thankfully for me, he made a mistake. And I was just able to pounce, like he said. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have caught him. To be fair, because he's pretty quick.
I mean, I've got to ask, Dan was setting lap times about 3 or 4 tenths slower than what you were doing in qualifying. How different is the car now? It's got the full fuel on board for the race. Are you noticing a big drop off in lap time because you managed to actually get that lap time back towards the end of the race?
Yeah, I think because the fuel load's not considerably that much more than what I normally run. I think the default's 30. So I think the first 2 or 3 laps you notice it, but very, very minimal. And then after that it's just the balance of the car just goes back to how it was in practice. So.
Well, good luck, Chris, on the race 2 reverse grid. It's going to be a difficult job trying to get through turn 1 nice and cleanly. But good luck with that, and huge congratulations taking your first win here with VRRC.
Thank you, mate. Cheers.
And that was Dave chatting to our podium position drivers from race number 1. And, well, it was a fantastic race. Dave, it was a little bit that classic first race, qualifying dictating things, wasn't it? A little bit. Drivers just spaced themselves out just a touch. But in race 2, top 10, we always expect a little bit of drama and fireworks. I wouldn't expect anything different, especially heading down into T1 like our cameras are about to do.
Yeah, if I'm truly honest, I'm quite nervous about the start of this race. Unfortunately, Monza is a bit like Spa. We were talking about this earlier. It's always such a bottleneck corner, and I hope the drivers just use their heads a bit and realise it's not a corner you really want to be going 3 wide into.
It is the classic example of you can't win the race on turn number 1, isn't it? It's the definition of that sort of phrase, if anything, as well. And we mentioned the Academy a couple of times. Well, what we're going to do now is not show or talk about it, because I just realised we've only got a minute left until race number 2. But maybe we will have a chat about it at race during the race if things die down just a touch, which I don't anticipate they will, Dave. But there's always that option, which is delightful as well. So
I think things are going to get fair risky here. Fair
risky is probably a good assessment of how risky things are going to get. Kenny Press on pole position, Andy Carroll in 2nd place, Callum Newsham in 3rd, Jordan Brennan in 4th. Andy Dorman rounds out the top 5 again, as he did in race number 1. Jack Mack, Ryan Elliott, Scott Bugner, Dan Zelos, Chris Shepherd, Mick Sutton, Brad Smith rounding out the field. Only 10 seconds to go, so wait for the lights. In fact, there they are. It's almost as if I'm pressing the button, which I'm not, so I'm quite happy about that one. But as the engine notes start to rise as the American BMW on pole position, the lights come on. The engine notes very much do rise, and we'll be racing for the 2nd time here on a Tuesday night for the VRRC League of Champions. A hell of a lot of wheel spin from the American BMW of Kenny Press going down towards T1 is allowing Andy Carroll to get up the inside, I believe. It's a long way to T1. Can they all calm it down? Are they going to go 3 wide? I do hope not, but it is a good start, especially by Andy Carroll. You can see in the background there a couple of drivers being nudged around is probably the polite way of saying it, but the McLaren in, I think that's Jack McIntyre, is certainly in a good position, although Chris Shepherd appears to be deciding to want to go backwards towards the pit lane. Not sure what Chris is doing, but one thing is for sure, he's not winning this race.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's been a little bit of a spin there, hasn't it, by Chris Shepherd, unfortunately, on the start lap. But other than that, it has been a relatively clean start. Andy Dorman putting a lunge up the inside. I believe that was on Jordan Brennan. Callum Newsham there, using his head, using the escape road on the chicane there. Not getting an advantage, nothing wrong with that at all. Jack McIntyre really pouncing on this chance here. Ryan Elliott trying to get up the inside of Kenny Press as well. Kenny is right amongst this here.
He is indeed, yeah. Starting on pole position, he's probably the first to admit he probably won't stay there for too long. And he didn't even make it 100 metres, unfortunately. But Andy Carroll has absolutely flown away with us at the moment. Now we'll see that he's got Jack Mack behind him and Callum Newsham in the wall by the looks of it. Apparently, he is having a little bit of a connection issue with Callum Newsham today, which is maybe some of the reason why he's getting nudged about a little bit more, because people are finding it difficult to find where his car is actually going to be on the circuit. In fact, you can see it visually that his car is jumping around a little bit. So, Dan Zelos, oh, whoa, Kenny Press, he's just gone off. He's just gone straight on, decided he didn't want to be part of that fight anymore, and he's coming back off the Ascari chicane about now as Callum goes up the inside, but so does Dan Zelos. Flies up the inside of Jordan Brennan. This is Newsham on Andy Dorman. Dorman not quite making the progress that he was hoping for. He did get up to 4th, but I fear that he's going to go down into 5th as the Audi, not that quick in a straight line, but we've seen how late Callum is willing to break into the first corner before he gets back into that slipstream. Dan Zelos gets past Jordan Brennan. He's got Scott Bugner for company in behind him as well, almost using each other as a tow. Newsham goes up the inside, last of the late breakers. We've seen him do it in race number 1, but I tell you what, Dorman not having any of it, and Newsham giving him a push.
Yeah, that was a bit naughty there, maybe by Callum Newsham. A huge spin by Dorman. How the world did all the cars miss him there? He just went through the middle. Jordan, a fantastic swerve left there to avoid a massive collision. That was so lucky for all them cars to miss Andy Dorman as he went back across the track.
I tell you what, if Jordan Brennan wins this championship, he'll be thanking that particular moment, because that was absolutely huge. As Zelos is carving his way through, isn't he? And who's that? That's Press, I think, spinning. No, it's not. It's Smith. Sorry, it's Brad Smith spinning around. So, unfortunately, a few of the drivers that you don't necessarily always see at the front of the order have now dropped right to the back of the order due to a few spins here and there. Chris Shepherd's up to 9th place as a result of it all, though. So Callum Newsham in 5th has got Scott Bugner behind him, obviously finishing in 3rd, Scott. And again, one of those drivers we don't talk about enough. We don't give him enough credit. We don't give him enough airtime. He's doing brilliantly well. He moves his way past Callum Newsham into 5th position. The McLaren very strong in a straight line. Obviously, we mentioned the Audi maybe not quite as strong, but Newsham is about to get mugged by Jordan Brennan here as well, I think. Jordan, after surviving that scare, is on the attack. But look at this, so are both of the Audis.
Yeah, I mean, I still can't quite get how the cars managed to avoid Dorman there. He just went between the two cars. That is a brave move by Newsham round the outside of Scott Bugner. I tell you what, Jordan Brennan's going to be looking at this going, get me part of this slipstream, and I'm going to have both of them down into the first corner. So let's keep an eye on this battle develop. Ryan Elliott's not that far up the road, and Chris Shepherd's really bringing himself back into the picture as well. Sat in 9th, but lapping very quickly indeed.
Bit of a bump draft there, isn't there? I think we're on board with Jordan Brennan as he's trying to force Callum Newsham past Scott Bugner. And Newsham did get past, but he's gone very hot into turn number 1. He won't have a particularly fantastic exit out of it, but Brennan there using the bump draft. And I think Smith Newsham won't mind too much because it did give him the race, the track position. But look at this, up the inside. You can't really take your eyes off this, can you? The timing board is going absolutely mental. Bugner back ahead, but for how much longer? They're going to be side by side into the second chicane. No, they're not. Bugner's going to be ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was maybe just the pure grunt there from the McLaren, just giving him the advantage, but very smart driving by Callum Newsham there. No, not to get too involved with that. This is a move here. Andy Carroll getting overtaken by Jack Mack. But I tell you what, Andy Carroll, fair play. 5 minutes into the race, and he's only just lost the lead of the race. So that really shows Andy Carroll here really driving very well indeed.
Yeah, he may have left Newcastle in the summer, but he's certainly doing very well here on the racetrack. No relation whatsoever to the footballer, but you get what I mean. Ryan Elliott goes through as well, though, doesn't it? And that was crucial to try and keep up with Jack McIntyre for Elliott, wasn't it? I'm sure Elliott was probably McIntyre was probably hoping Carroll could do him a bit of a favour, and he's probably still hoping for that. McIntyre going extremely defensive. I think that isn't actually because he's worrying about the move into the Parabolica. I think it's just so he's covering off the slipstream, so he's not giving Elliott that slipstream. I'm surprised he didn't try and go back into the toe, but maybe he was driving in his mirrors somewhat. And he didn't want to leave a door open for Andy Carroll. Dan Zelos up to 4th place, Scott Bugner up to 5th, Callum Newsham 6th, Jordan Brennan 7th, Chris Shepherd up to 8th now. Mick Sutton, Brad Smith, Andy Dorman and Kenny Press are rounding out the field, but this is the focus of attention at the moment because here comes Dorman again on Elliott. McIntyre will be looking in the rearview mirror, thinking and praying that these two can hold each other up for as long as possible. And that's a huge hit at the curves for Elliott, and that will not help him whatsoever. But what it has done is scared Carroll off.
Yeah, Carroll there, just real good race and respect. Knowing that, you know, Ryan's in the fight for the championship here, not getting too involved. In saying that, he's still racing nice and hard. He's in a brilliant position here for a really good finishing point, and actually going to climb quite considerably up the championship table if he can hold on to this. Honestly, Andy Carroll here really impressing me.
Yeah, he is indeed. He's doing brilliantly well. He's not only just being overtaken and dropping, he's really mixing it in, isn't he? He's got Dan Zelos for company. Zelos, again, will be hoping for a podium position and a really strong round for him here if he can help it. And I think if I just refresh my point standing, yeah, Dan Zelos is actually 2nd in the championship going into this race, not just this weekend, into this race. Jack McIntyre is in the lead of the championship, lead of this race as well, so he's on course to extend. Ryan Elliott is currently in 3rd in the championship. He's currently on course to extend catch up to Dan Zelos slightly, but not by an awful lot. In fact, he's actually on course to overtake him because they're both on 43 points.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that this is really going to mix the championships tables up a little bit. Jack Mack doing a fantastic job here in race 2. Actually, Dan Zelos find a way past Andy Carroll up into 3rd place. I tell you what, Dan Zelos could be the boy to watch here. Really on the move here in a light car. Good lap times. This could be interesting. There's still 11 minutes left of this race yet. Dan Zelos is probably the guy to watch. Jack McIntyre with that full 60 kg on wouldn't have finished in race 1 where he wanted to, probably where he thought he was going to end up with having that extra weight in the car. But I tell you what, I bet he didn't think he was going to be winning this race in race 2 with 60 kg on, and that's probably going to mean if provisionally he's going into the next round with 60 kg on as well.
He'll probably be hoping that this race was about 11 minutes shorter than it's going to be, isn't he? But we haven't even hit halfway. And Jack McIntyre will already be counting down at the seconds and the corners because he just knows that it's going to be difficult, doesn't he? I mean, Ryan Elliott's got a fair amount of weight on board as well, and so has Dan. But 60 kilos compared to Dan Zelos' 30 is monumental, isn't it? It's absolutely huge. It's like having a child on board with you, basically. It's like having a 10-year-old come along for the ride around Monza. It's not going to help your distribution very well. Kenny Press goes round. Dorman gets past Smith as well. The Dorman, I mean, he's the one out of place at the moment, isn't he, Dave? He's the one that's really suffered from this. A couple opening 9 minutes, shall I say. And he's not going to be particularly happy, especially with how his practice pace was, how his race pace at the end of race 1 was, and how it's gone overall for him.
Yeah, exactly that. You know, it's not ideal, but it's one of them things. We're looking, Andy Carroll still doing a great job, sat there in 4th place. Scott Bugner in 5th place, not closing the gap as much as you maybe think. And I tell you what, Jordan Brennan looking very racy behind Callum Newsham here. But remember, Jordan Brennan's got a bit of extra of that weight on board. And look who's lurking just behind him. Chris Shepherd, the fastest lapper on track, isn't too far off the back of them. It's still possible, Chris Shepherd, to work his way back into these positions before the end of the race for sure.
Here's a question for you, Dave. This might be absolutely putting you on the spot. Obviously,
probably will be.
The Sim Race 5 chassis is up for grabs in all the championships. So the Ginetta Super Cup, the touring cars, the GT4, and of course the Mini JCW in a couple of weeks' time. But if a driver, say Dan Zelos, won the touring cars, he won that Sim Race 5. what if he wins the GT4? Surely he doesn't get 2 Sim Race 5s.
He gets 2 Sim Race 5s.
Is he?
Yeah.
Fair play to him.
Yeah.
At least he'll be able to sell it, make a tiny profit.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, fair play. So I was just making sure, just clarifying that, because that thought just occurred to me, and I thought, I wonder if that's actually going to potentially be happening. But you know, fingers crossed, it comes down to the wire.
Yeah, the prizes have already been worked out. They're already there in storage in the HQ for VRRC, and the prize has been set aside. Whichever driver wins, that's what you get. So, yeah, I mean, if a driver manages to win more than one, fair play, and what he does with it is anyone's guess. Jordan Brennan there with a huge sideways moment, yet again, doing so well not to get collected there by Chris Shepherd. Chris Shepherd must have thought, blinking heck, do I accelerate? Do I put my brakes on? Do I steer? I've just got a Jordan Brennan spinning in front of me.
Yeah, that was quite terrifying, as Brennan, yet again, though, he's not dropped too far away. But Chris Shepherd up to 7th position. He'll be scoring some good points by the end of the next 8.5 minutes. It's going to be very exciting. Yeah, it's a worthy investment, really, isn't it? I suppose you pay to enter the championship, and you got potential of winning 4 Sim Race 5 chassis. You could end up creating a LAN service, couldn't you? Empty out one of your bedrooms, like your main bedroom, just sleep downstairs on the sofa and have a sim-based LAN setup in your main bedroom. That'd be absolutely brilliant. Maybe that's what Dan Zelos is planning. Who knows?
Yeah, I was going to make a terrible joke there, Jack, and I was saying, well, maybe you could build yourself a Sim Race 20, but that's a pretty dreadful joke there. But as we see, Chris Shepherd up into 7th place, closing onto the back of Callum Newsham. He's lapping very, very fast indeed, 58.6. So actually currently the fastest driver there on track as well. Dan Zelos with a 58.7 on the previous lap. Both drivers in front are 59.1s, so he's nearly half a second faster than first and second place. I tell you what, Jack, Dan Zelos has got the chance to take this win, I'm telling you.
I tell you what as well, we've got 7.5 minutes to go. You got to throw hats into the name for driver of the day at some point, Dave. Now, Dan Zelos is probably the obvious candidate due to the pace that he's been showing, potentially the racecraft in race number 2. Andy Carroll has been a standout in race number 1. I wouldn't say there was too many performances to really go shouting at the hills about for race number 1, because it was all a bit stagnant in the end. It was all a bit, you know, everybody was just putting in their qualifying times or recovering from where they maybe fell down a little bit, like Chris Shepherd. But race number 2 is always the one that shows the drivers of the day, in my opinion. Andy Carroll's done a fantastic job of showing himself as a good contender here. He's still in 4th place. He's got Scott Bugner behind him. But the top 5 running that he's shown with these drivers has been very impressive.
Yeah, for me, Andy Carroll is definitely there at the top of the list for driver of the day, but very close is Chris Shepherd. If Chris Shepherd can gain any more positions here, he's definitely also going to be one of my other favourites here for driver of the day. Brilliant race 1, fantastic pace, great consistency, great racecraft in race 1 just to gauge when to go for their moves. But for me, to get spun out in the first chicane and then spin it round, get caught back up and be still right in this pack and a chance to get in that top 5 bracket, fair play Chris Shepherd as well.
I'll tell you what, I'll move with you. We'll see, out of Dorman and Shepherd, who finishes closer to the top 5. Because that'll be impressive. If Dorman can, if Carroll, between Carroll and Shepherd, if Carroll can maintain top 5 running, I think it'll be very impressive, especially as he's got Newsham and Shepherd behind him. If Shepherd can get past both of them, that'll complete a fantastic comeback in my eyes. And look at this, he's already getting very close to them indeed. So I think let's leave it down to the checkered flag and see between Carroll and Shepherd. If anybody else wants to throw any other names in the mix there, based on performances, then you can, of course, let us know. Elliot, who did win the Ginetta Super Cup portion of the League of Champions, so he already has his Sim Race 5. He's hunting down a race win against Jack McIntyre, who's yet to win a Sim Race 5 chassis. So we'll keep an eye on how that's all going to unfold, as he's got Dan Zelos hunting him down now. Tom O'Farrell, our cameraman, did also shout in our Discord chat the fact that the fastest lap has been set by none other than Andy Dorman, a full 10th of a second quicker than Jack McIntyre. Andy Dorman, though, is getting very sideways and doesn't look to be progressing very much out of the les modes, that's for sure. So maybe he's got one quick lap in him, but I think he's got a little bit of damage on his car there, maybe as well. I'm not sure. He's not running very quickly anymore. Scott Bugner, green sector 2. He's trying to chase down Dan Zelos, of course, but he's got 2.5 second gap to be dealing with. Here's Chris Shepherd with a nice view of the Andy Carroll and Callum Newsham bar.
Yeah, he is. He's just weighing this up, isn't he? He's looking, going, you know what? This is starting to develop a little bit of a battle up in front, and I'm going to be all part of this if there's any sort of mistake here. So actually, Chris Shepherd looking really, really good for a mighty comeback in my eyes. Dan Zelos sitting, doing exactly the same thing, sitting back on Ryan Elliott and Jack Mack, and just weighing that scenario up as well. I think Ryan is looking racy against Jack McIntyre, but saying that, I don't think he's silly enough to put any lunges on that might sacrifice his second place. So I think them drivers are going to be reasonably smart about things as well.
He might not have an option, actually, because Dan Zelos is right in his tail, and last of the late breakers yet again. Callum Newsham, Chris Shepherd getting all into the gearbox of Andy Carroll, and again, Newsham managing to stop the car by the second apex. I tell you what,
He's good at that, isn't he? He's good at
I don't know
that.
how he's managing to stop this car, because he's sending a good 5 to 7 miles an hour into the corner quicker than anybody else. It's quite incredible, to be honest, and the fact that he's not getting pinged on the exit as well. I think the fact that he's managing to stop on the apex of the second corner, it's just managing to hold off anybody else's run, and that's a huge cut over the chicane by Shepherd, and off goes Carroll. Carroll going off as he was trying to fight back with Newsham. He was trying to hold his own against two very good drivers. Andy Carroll dropping down to 7th place, and he'll have a horrible run, and potentially Mick Sutton will Jordan Brennan even will have a little bit of a sniff on him. But Shepherd now released and trying to hunt down Newsham for top 5.
Yeah, unfortunately, Callum Newsham's got some serious rubber banding issue here. You can see him jumping back and forward. This is not going to be good for Chris Shepherd. He's going to be looking at this going, do I go past him? Do I sit back? I'm not sure where his car is, but I also want that 5th place finish. So, whoa, in fact, that is the answer. I don't know what's happened there. Callum Newsham has gone off. Chris Shepherd has found himself up in the 5th position. Andy Carroll's found himself back up in the 6th. I mean, that just shows how, you know, it's penalised all the drivers around Callum Newsham, and now the rubber banding's actually bit him. So Callum Newsham now back in 9th place. I'd imagine as a driver he's going to be looking at that going, what the world just happened there?
Yeah, well, all I've seen is the damage that's been put onto his car, and I'm just trying to look for where he's coming back on the circuit. I have no idea, to be honest. So, yeah, well, there he is. In fact, he's in 9th. He's at Paulo Magolica, just ahead of Andy Dorman. So all of this is starting again, isn't it? It's a flashback to race 1 all of a sudden with these two fighting. Jack McIntyre still leading from Dan Zelos, but only by half a second or so. I think they were trying to make moves on each other into the first corner.
Oh, Dan Zelos has passed Ryan Elliott.
That'll be why I've mistaken, and then all of a sudden the gap's grown to 0.6 of a second because Zelos has gone through.
Wow, that's a major development. I wonder whether that's Ryan Elliott going, you know what? Dan's got a bit of pace on me. He's a teammate. I'm going to let him through and see what he can do with Jack Mack in front. We've seen Dan has got some serious pace in this car, so this is going to be a one to keep an eye on. But actually, he's had a huge moment coming out of the last chicane. Will he manage to hold on to 3rd place here? Look at Scott Bugner. Scott Bugner's getting closer to the back of Dan Zelos now as well. Just when I was saying that, was that a curse of the commentator? I believe it was, Jack.
Yeah, I think he'll be having a word with you afterwards, especially if we end up interviewing him. Be quite entertaining. Yeah, but actually, Dan Zelos actually got green sector 1 as well, so he was running very well. He just didn't quite, obviously, have the grip in the end. McIntyre will be very pleased with that. With 40 seconds to go, he's got a decent gap. He's got about 1.5 seconds all of a sudden to Ryan Elliott, Dan Zelos, Scott Bugner, Chris Shepherd, doing very well in 5th place. Andy Carroll in 6th position. And then you got Mick Sutton, Callum Newsham rejoined in 8th, although there's Jordan Brennan actually. He's in 7th place, apologies, ahead of Mick Sutton. It's because Jordan Brennan's still not appealing on that timing tower, which is what I'm primarily looking at. As Zelos, I don't think he's going to be in too much trouble here from Bugner, but Bugner will be certainly hoping for a 2nd podium position on the final lap of the race.
Yeah, definitely that, but I think Dan Zelos is probably a little bit shook up there. You know, he's probably thinking, right, let's bring it home in 3rd place, take maybe a 10th out my lap time, not push it as hard. Don't think Scott Bugner's quite close enough to get that real slipstream advantage here. It's probably just a safe enough sort of gap. you know, brilliant finish still by Dan Zelos if he can hold on to this P3 finish. Ryan Elliott's found himself back up into P2. Jack Mack with a fantastic drive out in P1. But for me, it's Chris Shepherd in P5. He's been up against everything, lagging cars, a spin out the chicane in the end of lap 1. For me, he's put a drive together where he's just got his head down, he's gone, right, let's just deal with stuff and let's use that outright pace just to pull myself back through and bring us back into this championship.
Yeah, normally we're actually discussing driver of the day well into the podium position interviews after the race, aren't we? But I think I'll come to agree with you here for Chris Shepherd. Obviously, his Shanghai results were not what he was hoping for, but he's come here today. He's taken a race victory. He took pole position. Driver of the day isn't necessarily about finishing positions or overall pace. Is normally about how well a driver overcomes adversity or impresses us. I think Chris Shepherd has both impressed us and overcame adversity in that second race especially. He's recovered to P5 and I think he's done a fantastic job. Plus he hasn't won driver of the day before now, so he'll be bagging himself a nice new set of AOC Gaming headphones, prize of which I'm quite jealous of. I could never think to win the Sim Race 5 or the Sim Race 3 or the GT4 seat. However, I could always like my look of the gaming headset. So very well done to him. As McIntyre comes back towards the Parabolica, the end of the final lap, the end of racing for this evening. Anyway, before next week, he'll be back, and he'll be back with 60 kilos on board because Jack McIntyre is going to take the victory here at Monza to extend his championship lead ahead of Ryan Elliott and Dan Zelos. It will be Ryan Elliott as well in second place in the championship, Zelos in third place in the championship. Scott Bugner comes across the line in fourth. A good set of results for him this evening, third and a fourth. Chris Shepherd rounds out the top 5. Andy Carroll comes home in sixth position. Still a brilliant drive by Andy Carroll, it has to be said. Jordan Brennan in seventh in the end after avoiding multiple collisions. Mick Sutton in 8th, Andy Dorman in 9th, Callum Newsham 10th, Brad Smith in 11th. I'm second guessing myself when I'm reading out his name. And Kenny Press, who started on pole, he'll come across the line in 12th place. Well, Dave, it was a fantastic race. A very good drive by our race winner as well, considering he had all that weight on board. Didn't necessarily look like he had the overall pace, but he crucially has the race win, and you could have a chat to him.
Yeah, can indeed. But first we'll go to our third place finisher. It was looking like second was on the cards there, but just a little mistake through the second chicane. Did very well to keep it out the wall completely. Dan Zelos, that must have been a little bit of a scary moment for you.
It was a little, yeah, a little bit disappointed. You know, I was catching Jack as well, but that just showed his experience. I think, you know, he had all of it breathing down his neck, and he kept it on the black stuff, which is one of the main things you got to do in racing. So, nah, still happy with the podium. Happy for my mate Ryan for getting a podium, and you know, well done to Jack. He led a great race.
Well, fair play, Dan, and it's still a great points haul, and it's brought you right into championship contention there with a double podium here tonight. Fantastic effort, and looking forward to seeing what you can do in Spain next round out.
Thanks, mate.
I'll move on to our P2 finisher, Ryan Elliott. It wasn't to be in race 1 regarding getting a podium, but you've done it in race 2, and you've got to be fair happy with that as well.
You know me, Dave, never satisfied. Really disappointed. I felt like I had so much more pace than I showed, and I should have really been fighting for wins. But I mean, fair play to Jack. I mean, I'm sure he won't mind me saying that around the rest of the track I was probably faster than him, but he just got that chicane right every single lap, and that was where the time was lost and gained. And I got into his sort of slipstream window, but I just couldn't capitalise. Just didn't have enough for him. But really good outing in general. I mean, it'll bump me up to I think P2 in the overall champ. But great result as well for the team. Obviously, we had 1, 2, 3, 4 in the first, and then we had a second, third, fourth, fifth in that one. So
yeah, I mean, fantastic effort there, and as you say, a great championship points haul for your overall contention. And you know, you've got to be starting to think of the bigger picture now. The end finale races at the end of League of Champions, it's looking good to put it all together for them big finale races.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Well, huge congratulations, Ryan. And we'll move on to our P1 finisher with 60 kg on board. And I am going to use a bit of what Ryan Elliott said there. It turns out precision really does mean points.
Yeah, that was... if I'm honest, that's probably one of the toughest races I've ever had. With the weight on board, it was so hard to keep that pace up. And I came out of the first chicane on the first lap with a really good run, and then halfway around the lap I was in second, and I kind of said to myself, I can win if I get that chicane right 12 times. I think I can win the race, and well, I think I got about 10 out of 12. And like Ryan said, everyone had a lot of pace on me throughout the whole lap, but that chicane, you just have to nail it every time. And yeah, I think that's just about what I did. And then as Dan said, he was catching and he was gonna pass me. So I think we both knew that we needed to really send it and put in a lot of quality laps, and it was just unfortunate for Dan that he made that little mistake. But yeah, chuffed. Really didn't expect to even do an interview this week. Never mind a win. So yeah, really happy.
Yeah, you've done a top job there, Jack, to bring home a podium, and well, more than a podium, a first place finish. I take it that 60 kg though you think is really going to hinder you the next round here in Spain.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I think around the corners it might not be so bad. I think it hurt quite a lot around the straights here. It was maybe about a second a lap, I think, on like an optimal lap with and without ballast. So yeah, we'll have to see how it goes at Barcelona, but it's a track that I enjoy, so hopefully that'll offset the disadvantage a little bit.
Well, looking forward to seeing how you get on there, Jack. Good luck and see you at Spain. I'll move on to our driver of the round, Chris Shepherd. It wasn't the start of race 2 that you needed, but I tell you what, crawl back up to 5th. That was a hell of a fight back, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was a good comeback in the end. Probably overdriving a little bit because I wasn't setting the same lap times as I was in the first race, but yeah, it was fun, and that's the main thing.
Well, fantastic effort. Congratulations on taking driver of the day, and more crucially, still no weight on board of your car. Go towards Barcelona. I think you're going to be one to watch. Good luck, Chris.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
And that was Dave Marshall talking to pretty much everyone on the grid. No, I'm only kidding. It was the top 3 plus Chris Shepherd. There's such a lot of people to talk to through this evening, but it's fantastic to get all the insights. On your screen right now is the championship order. Jack McIntyre, 71 points, 11 points ahead of Ryan Elliott. Dan Zelos with 58 points is in 3rd. Scott Bugner in 4th. Jordan Brennan in 5th. Chris Shepherd is in 6th. And Andy Dorman in 7th. The day that he was hoping would be a big improvement for him, Dave, but it wasn't quite to be, was it?
No, unfortunately, a very, very frustrating day for himself. And actually, I must be corrected here. Chris Shepherd currently in 6th place. Remember, it's weight for 8, so 6th place has got 18 kg of ballast on. So Chris has actually got weight on going towards Spain. Whether 18 kilograms is really going to hinder him that much, we'll wait and see. But I can't imagine it's going to be nearly as much as Jack there on 60 kg.
We'll have to wait and see. But of course, we're already halfway through this season. I can't quite believe it, but it's because we're talking about it's getting close, and it's already the start of the season basically. But we are now halfway through. We are 50%. The next round, Barcelona. Then we're off to Spa, where they'll have to behave themselves yet again up Eau Rouge and through La Source, of course, as well. So if you fancied joining us for the rest of the season, then by all means give a like and a subscribe, or whatever you're doing, wherever you're following this from, on the page that you are following it. My name has been Jack Oliphant. I've been alongside Dave Marshall for this evening's action with Tom O'Farrell on the cameras. It's been a pleasure having you along. It's been some fantastic racing. And be sure to check back next week, same time, same place, for more fantastic VRRC League of Champions action.
Between the two of them, the inside of Coates, Parker gets too heavily involved. And that's Whitehead and Coates.